empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we've initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of this session is Blast Your App with Gatling. And our guest speaker today is Swapnil Kotwal. He's the SQA engineer at SailPoint Technologies. Swapnil is a software engineer mostly involved in working on Java, Android SDK, API testing, automation project architecture design. He's a mathematician by education and software engineer at SailPoint, and is also active member of some open source projects like Gatling and APM, and a frequent speaker for open source community in Pune. He has delivered many sessions for APM, mobile automation tool, and also for Gatling to scale large web applications. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Swapnil.
Yeah, thanks, Deepali. Welcome everybody and good afternoon. So, I'm Swapnil Kotwal, and so today we are going to deliver a session on Gatling, which is an open source technology to do performance testing, and which is developed recently. There are so many open source technologies and projects. And many tools available, framework available that you can do performance testing using that. But we're going to see what traditional testing approaches are and how it can be improved using Gatling. So basically, Gatling was developed in Scala. So it mostly the people was on Java developers. They loving JMeter only, but somehow they find out some ways to improve JMeter, and so what we need to do performance testing. So when it comes to performance testing, we need to think in many ways. So we do think about how client sides should be, how many server sides should be, how we scale the things, how we maintain the delivery, adding CDN server, caching servers like Redis, and so many caching servers, multiple CDN networks, and to reach global delivery, having good bandwidth and all these things. Also, there are some recent technology developed like AngularJS, Node.js, JavaScript technology, which actually not loads the full page, but the part of it, so that user could get good user experience, and it should work in lower bandwidth also, and it should consume very small bandwidth and work fine. So, okay, moving to Gatling back, it is developed, and the thing that you can do the performance testing. So as I mentioned, there are many things, components that came in a picture that we should mention before scaling out application. But when it comes to nobody cares about what tool you are actually using. Okay, so you think about how your client side should be, how your server side should be, and all these things. I mean, the middleware, all these things. But have you ever think about is your tool that you are going to use itself is scalable? Whatever tool you are using, it's actually achieving your goal or perfectly. I mean, you are relying on it, and it is giving. You are rely on it, and it is giving you a proper result or not. So let's move on. So yeah, I started using Gatling when it was not actually matured. It was under development process, and it was not at all stable at that time. So for any commit, for all things, there were lots and lots of bugs was there, and also I'm not that much familiar with this tool, so I need to ask each and everything. So just hats off to the Stefan, who helped me a lot for every individual commit. I think I asked him middle of night at 12 p.m. or something, because he's in UK and I'm in India's location. So he replied me immediately, and my velocity for my progress was continued, and he keep it moving. His team also so supportive, and working with him was a great experience for me. Okay, and yeah, so if you want to use this tool, definitely he is the best guy to interact with. Okay, so first thing we'll start with introduction to Gatling, and later we'll see demo for it, some live code, how to run with and how to get familiar with it. Okay, so okay. So Akshay Thakur asked us very interesting question on that portal. On what ground we should start testing? Okay, so I will start with that question because that's somehow related to this section only. So why we need performance testing and how it started. So before moving ahead, I want to show, I want to represent some example. So a year back, Flipkart announced a big billion day, and really Flipkart made a billions of maybe dollars out of it. But it was frustrating day for all the consumer, and that was the first time Flipkart was criticized so much. So and other example is just IRCTC. So we all know the older version of IRCTC, how people were frustrated and how we booked the ticket using that. So first thing, to start the performance testing, you should know what your audience, how many customers you are going to serve, and how you are to serve your geographical and all these things. So on that basis, your business analyst or the people who is in market research, they come with some data that the system that we are developing is going to have this much audience and this many people can be served. So on that basis, when you are developing some cloud application or in-house application, or you are developing some APIs to integrate with many platforms, in that case, you need something before going to production. You should have some data, some statistics, some analysis with you that can help you to avoid future customer frustration. Okay. So performance testing is categorized in basic three criteria basically. First is load testing, second is stress testing, and third one is endurance testing to check the system. So what is load testing? Load and the capacity, it's the same thing. So when you say load testing, so based on whatever research, market research you have, some data gathered, and on that basis some load kept on your system, your application under test run against that data, and you get some test analysis on that basis, and you get some idea at that certain load how your system was behaving, right? And stress testing means applying load that so that your system can be stressed, and more than that, what happened if your load is increased more than the expected. So that all kind of trial and error or experimental stuff done in-house only before going to production. That's why the tagline Gatling uses is have your application, your code production ready, and avoid all the problems that you may have. There is another way to test the sustainability of your application, the endurance test. So for consistently, if there are so many users are there, they are using consistently for a long time, then how your system is behaving. And there are a couple of many other ways to do performance testing, but that we can avoid for now. Okay, so I already explained these three criteria over here. Okay, so why you need a performance testing, right? So I mentioned the frustration, avoiding the frustration, but keeping business point of view, you also need to think if you are making money out of it, you need your performance quite well. So in that, I have some example over here, so you can elaborate the things why it needs to have. So this was the some research done by Google. If their page loading speed getting slower by half second, 500 millisecond, their 20% of page seen low. So just imagine Google making their revenue mostly through advertisement, and it's completely depend on how many pages seen, and on that basis they are charging to user because they already have their own analytics, how many clicks and how many pages are viewed, and on their basis they make money and they charge to their customer. So performance is the one of the biggest issue, and if it is decreases, people start criticizing us. The other example is Amazon. So Amazon observed that if their page load speed increases by just 100 milliseconds, their overall yearly revenue decreased by 1%, and the total loss is $160 million per year. So that's a huge thing, and definitely nobody want to reduce their performance so they could decrease their sales. Nobody want actually, right? So yeah, how we should start maintaining a performance testing. So first thing is requirement gathering. So your BA or market analysis guys make some note, they analyze, they create a requirement that we need these many things, how our test should work, I mean how we want our application should behave on the production. They do analysis, they gather some data, they monitor, and on that basis we set up some benchmark. So accept the particular kind of testing, there are some benchmarks set, and on that benchmark, if our system is achieving that benchmark, then only we are green to go. Otherwise we need to scale our performance somehow, and you need to move ahead. So the same way as the user requirement is, Gatling is developed in that way. So you should have some data with you, a sample data. So there are some ways to feed the data to your test suite. Test suite developed in a Scala. So you can either have a JDBC connection with your databases and inject data through that. Second thing is there are CSV feeders, and so many, there are some other feeders also. So you can inject data, and against that data you can monitor your system, how it is behaving and how it is going on. So how then what you need to simulate. I mean you don't have, say for example, you want 10,000 users to be injected, right? So you need to simulate some virtual users, and on that basis you get some results on that basis. So there are different scenarios, of course, because we are injecting virtual users to the system, or virtual data to the system, and the actual production results may vary from your test suite, but it gives you at least a confidence that if you inject 10,000 users per minute or per hour, your system behaving in this manner. So if you have a 8,000 users kind of thing, then your system going to be well in production also. So we developed some scenarios in test suite. So there are some behavior and how it is injected to the system, and based on the user, it keep iterating. Your test suite keep iterating, and it moves ahead. So yeah, so let's start actual how it works. So yeah, as I mentioned, there are lots and lots of open source enterprise load testing tools are there, and people are happy with it. But if you get something more than that, how it is exactly? So yeah, so there are the most famous is JMeter and all these things. So let's see why one should go for Gatling. The first thing came in picture, that performance. So as I mentioned, people cares about CDN servers, caching servers, client side, server side, and performance of their system. But are you ever think about the tool that using for the performance testing is actually able to handle that performance? I mean, it is able to scale that much? So the performance is the one of the issue, and that's why from the Java, Scala is developed, and Scala is the successor of Java. So Scala is largely scalable, and that's why Gatling is developed in Scala. So there are some modules which was in Java, and those applied in Scala. So that's why these people developed it in Scala. So in case of whatever the application that is running on Java, so for performance testing, if you inject one user, so how it deal with your JVM, Java virtual machine. So for a user, it creates one thread, and that's fine. I mean, you can create a user and that's in a thread. So okay, so something like this. When you have 50 threads on Java virtual machine, yes, your system, I mean your tool which is doing performance testing will run seamlessly. There's no problem at all. But what if there is 200 threads? Yeah, something like this, right? Yeah, so these are the major issues we have with Java. So that overcome, instead of having multiple users, these folks introduce asynchronous unblocking IO that can work asynchronously with client server and will not block or thread or use minimum hardware and software requirement that reduce your organizational cost to certain level, and using just a very small machine. You can do literally you can inject with, I mean, simulate millions of users using just your laptop, but just you need that system, okay? So the blocking IO is when your thread is injected, so it thread just keep waiting, okay? And it is waiting for response, and till that time it gets slept. That means your system, I mean the tool that you have, so you injected 10,000 users in a minute or in a few minutes. So how it would be? So if your system blocking it and waiting for to get a response, so it probably blocking other users, and even though you set benchmark that I want 1,000 users per minute injected, but actually your performance tool not doing the thing. It is doing something like this. It is waiting for a response and sleeping if you didn't get it. Okay, yeah, this slide will going to explain what I talked already. So this is a result. Many of us may be familiar with this. So this is how JMeter gives it. So are you really going to trust this result, right? So in a front you can see there is a small plateau, and at the end there are very up and down spikes are there. So that means your tool itself have not injected number of users or sessions properly. It's not spread across the time, and it is lagging behind the time, and you are not actually getting what you should, right? Compared to this is how when you run your test suite, you will get results from Gatling and how consistent it is. So here we have 300 transaction and 300 active users were there, but they are consistent and they executed, they spread across time very timely. Second issue is usability. So how much useful your tool is, okay? So graphical user interface. So it's a debate again. So some people love graphical user interface, and some people whoever the actually developer, they actually want something that they can do a code and interact with it, and it should be a test suite, and you can actually do a code instead of dealing with the GUI, right? So many times people found, I mean, the developer or the programmer in heart finds GUI is much more complicated than the code. Third, and the most important thing is maintain, how to maintain your test suite. Okay, so this is how. Say you are in a beta or alpha release phase, or you are in very early development phase, and you are tracking your performance at very beginning of when your system development is going on. So in that case, you develop some test suite in JMeter, and you have some megabytes of XML files. So when system is not matured and it's under development, there are many things going to be changed. So many times we observe that instead of modding the XML file, it's easy to create a test suite again. So just imagine, to create a complete new test suite is not a simple task. It takes a time, resources, and definitely it's going to waste money. So how it maintains? So it means you should have like a unit test or something, a test suite that can be maintained, and if there is something change in something particular model or some API or some web services, you can actually change the code and interact with it. So yes, the white part is how a traditional system behaves. So they were synchronous. They wait till server's response, while Gatling uses a synchronous model in that it sends a request to the server and will not wait till get the response. Till that time, it will utilize the same memory, hardware, whatever the resources available to inject the other users or other operations. Maybe some users is moving ahead. So that same memory, hardware, all the things utilized for that, and it will not sleep. So instead of having users and thread, it uses actor model. So explaining actor model is definitely, it was 20 years back. It was defined in Java, and it's imported in Scala also. So it's like our mailbox. Say for example, we send some mail to somebody. So we don't wait to get a response actually. So we just send a mail. Instead of making us a chat, we know that I don't know whether the person is available or not. Just send a mail, and when that person will available, he will send it back. So the actor model will work like this. Your request is made to the server, but it will not fold till the time, and it will move ahead. So that's how the actor model work, and it is not actually blocking the IO. So this is the three major differences that Gatling have. And yeah, so I just explain how actor works and how it maintains. So you can find more information about ACA actor model for Scala. So ACA is an actor model which is developed in Scala and widely used by Gatling. So that's why people, the developer of Gatling used Scala as a programming language. But no worries. People, they have a domain-specific language, DSLs, so you can integrate your Gatling tools with existing programming languages like Java, C# also, and you can integrate it with that also. So for asynchronous communication, they use asynchronous HTTP client library, and for non-blocking I/O, they use NATI IOs. So those are the non-blocking IOs. So you will find more information about this on Wikipedia or Google or on their official web page, but I will not spend much time on this. I will keep moving because we are actually interested in how Gatling works. Okay, so this is how Gatling going to work. So we have there are concept scenarios. Okay, so over here we have some scenario that I want to log in into the system. Okay, so what I want to execute, you see a second line over here. So that means you have a system, web services, and you want to make a HTTP request index.html. In that page, there is some login field. In that login field, you want to pass the parameters like a username field. So you can, it provides so many ways to inject the parameter in it. So you can use feeders, like as I said, you can use CSV, you can use JDBC connection and connect with any database, and or you can directly hard code it over here. So when it comes to the web, there are form data, there are payloads, sometimes it's encrypted. All these things can be done through these param attributes, and there are different ways to this. How you will check that your system actually authenticating your user or not. Okay, so just like if anybody, I mean, almost all of us is familiar with the assertion. So in that case, there are two cross check that you can check whether whatever the request you send to the server is served properly and you get the proper result, because you ultimately just send some console logs and actually it's not opening any browser application or something. It's just looking a black screen to you and a console panel. So you have checks to actually check when your system authenticated your some CSS or some cookies or something over there. You can check with this. There are so many ways. Over here it is specified as a CSS. Okay. Yeah, so introduction part is done. Let me move back to the demo actually. So the interesting part will start over here. Before moving to demo, I want to share a few things with you guys. Gatling, all code, it's open source. It's available on GitHub Gatling page, and a documentation available over here. So how you will start developing your test suite, right? So you just know basic concept. So basic concepts are virtual users. So you are injecting some virtual users in it, and on that basis you are making some decisions. So you can inject 1 user, 10 user, and you can increase as per your requirement. Scenarios. So the scenarios like a real life scenario. Say for example, first scenario of any application is load a page, first page, and a login scenario. So load a first page, login into system, authenticate, and maybe make some search query. Like for example, you logged in Twitter account and you want to search for some user. So you can in that way. So how your system have functionality? It is exactly granular level drill down, and as per your system, how it is behaving, how your HTTP request is sent to the server, we need to test it and create a scenario on that basis. So some scenarios categorized over here. On every HTTP request, it checks what the status code, and it make cross verification that you got 200 or 300 OK session. There is a way to run this test with cache, without cache. So you can configure your status code maybe 300 or 200 OK. Okay, session which is kept as a per user session to maintain if that user is authenticated, it should keep running, and all other operations should be moving on against that session for that user. Feeders. So feeders are the way you can inject data for any operation, for login, for searching some criteria, or feeding some data for the system. So there are multiple ways to feed data. Checks is just a cross check what your system getting. Assertion, and finally you get the reports out of it. How to set up your first simulation. So you inject the user, okay. So this is how. So as at the very beginning, I explained the 3 ways of performance testing. So the injection, there are APIs which is available over here. So for example, you want to inject something on your system, and the first is do nothing, or you inject some number of users and you want to hold for some time. Okay, so the APIs is nothing for that particular duration. Second is APIs is at once. How many number of users you want to inject in your system? Say you want to inject 10, 100 users at a time. Third is ramp user, number of users over some specific time. You want to inject 10,000 users in 100 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever your requirement. Okay. There are for endurance tests, there are ways. So for example, you want to keep endurance tests running for a long time. Okay. And for that particular time, you want after a 2 minute or after every minute, there should be a new user injected, and system keep running for a few days, few weeks to check the consistency. So this is how the API is developed for endurance tests. Ramp user per second. So this is how from rate 1 to rate 2 it is get increased and you inject it in your system. Likewise, there are many ways to inject it, and again you can customize it as per your requirement. Okay, reports. When your test suite actually completed running all the things, you will get pretty results. The first chart will something like this. You have this many requests in which lies between 0 to 800 milliseconds. That's a green area basically. The average request 800 milliseconds to 1200 milliseconds. The request which takes lesser than 1200 milliseconds and not switching that, and the failed one. Below is statistic, a global level, and individual request how it is. So how many requests was made for search query, for example, and how many KOs means passed. I mean OKs means passed and KOs means failed, and how much percentage of fail. How much time, response time it takes, minimum, maximum, and their average and their percentile, how the request was. Whatever the errors you have, if you haven't made your HTTP request properly or if anything change on server side, it categorized below as an error and will display below that. Okay, so this is how your number of active users injected in your system, and you can see the graph over there. Okay, so when your system is under load, at the beginning, the response time distribution is fast. It is giving a response very fast at the beginning, but it's lower down, and you can monitor it. On percentage basis, this is how it is categorized, and there are other graphs also. So let's move to actual code part. So actually I do have written some code over here. So very basic level, how to start with it. Okay, so we have some URL over here and how we work with it. So this is just web application. You can browse through it. You can add a new computer. You can make some filter query over here, or you can browse for some computer. So yeah, use a computer and make some queries like Windows. Okay, there is nothing. So you can see web request is made computers and a query param as a Windows. So on that basis, you need to define your scenarios. So for example, HTTP request. So HTTP request, if you open a developer tool in a browser, there are different way. What kind of headers should be accepted? What language, how the encryption should be, and all these things. Okay, so you have a freedom to mention how your client should be. It should be a mobile, it should be a Macintosh, it should be Mac OS, whatever OS you want, and the browser you want. You want a cache or without cache in this way, and you can define headers. In the header, whatever content type you want, CF, RF, token, and the things that you can specify in your header. And here we start actually doing your code. So you can specify any name to your scenario. Your first name of your request is you are in a root. Second request is you are in a root of a relative path of this web service actually. Second request is actually you are making a query computers and you are traveling through it. There are some couple of requests. So it's just a garbage stuff, and all the requests, everything is mentioned in the single object only. And at the bottom you can see scenario inject one user using the HTTP protocol that we specified. Let me run it. So to run it, how can you run? So basically what you need to do, go to their official website and download the zip file, bundle.zip file. In that zip file you can see something like this. If you extract it, you can see a bin directory. Okay, so either till the bin directory you can set environment variable, so you can get Gatling home available and you don't need to actually from anywhere you can access your test suite, run your test suite, or vice versa. Libraries contains all jars or libraries that needs to be there. Results folders have results of your test suite. Target, whatever your classes generated out of it. User files, so data. Data is whatever you want, physical data, TXT or CSV file that you want to inject it. Request bodies if you want some JSON to be injected or some kind of things, and actual simulation. In the simulation you can create your some folder, and in that you can create a Eclipse project and put it like this. So your basic object will be derived. So this class is extending the simulation. I mean this is a default class, and this is extending. I need to create whatever class I can create and I can start with, and these requests are made and I can start. So how it will start? Let's hit. So either set environment variable or move CD to Gatling bundle and bin and type a command Gatling. Okay. If you have multiple test suite under your target, then it will ask what test suite you are looking for. So say 0. This is what test suite we have. We have a scenario. We are logging into it and we are doing some operation. We are searching for some computers like this. So enter your description for this. So say first test, first Gatling test, description and title of it. Your simulation actually started. So you can see your scenario name, your no any scenario is started, but now your scenario is started. Your global request was status of your global request. Now how your requests are actually injected, and you can see OK KOs. OK means your request is green, KO means your request get failed. If there are any failures, that will be shown over here. Likewise, it will keep moving, and you can see for now we just have one user and are all requests running against it. Okay, so at the bottom you can see how many requests, global information of your system, how many requests are made. So there were total 13 requests was there, and all of them was passed. Failed requests will be categorized over here. Minimum response time and maximum average response time, standard deviation, response 95%, how it was, and minimum request per second, how many requests sent per second, right? And your global statistic, what the green zone and all these things. So let's see how your first result look like, right? So go to your simulation result folder over here, and my first test was this. Hit the index.html, and here you go. So out of 30, your 12 request was in a green zone. It was below 80 milliseconds. This was just one request was in average. The heavy low was not, and there was no any failure. Below is your information about it, how it was going. Okay, because we have just one user, a straight line across the time, how the response time distributed, how request and response time, and all these details. Interesting thing is, if you want to go in detail and check individual request, how it was, first request, second request. So you get average. So if you have hundreds of users, you get the results on that basis how your request minimum maximum time what was authored and all this information. Let's increase users to some higher level, say 100. Okay, so 100 would be okay, and see how your system is behaving. Okay, so we started load. We injected load of 100 users on the system, and we are running the first test only. Okay, the first. Okay, your simulation is started, and now you have for the same scenario we have basic scenario, and you injected 100 users. So you can see 100 users injected at the very first. On the first request itself, it's 100. That's what JMeter missing. Okay, so now you are getting a global request and how your system is behaving for the 100 users, and the result will be more interesting than that. Okay, so that's it. You got for the very basic scenario, you got some interesting results. Okay, so let's see how results look like. So overall your system made 1300 requests, and how your system was green, yellow, gem, how it was failed, how many was there, how your users was injected. Your users was injected at first time itself, and it decreases something like this. That means you get proper result and your system was performing in that a minute or second time. It takes, it will, how much time taken will be shown. Somewhere it's shown how time is it's taken total time. So your description of test suite or here, what time, how much duration, 32 seconds, everything will be shown. You can drill down to actual user, and for first user, our second request was our search actually. This is what search request was there. So yeah, so I made search query actually API query through HTTP request, and my all search functionality for 100 users at 1 second or 1 millisecond was perfectly in a green zone. I can increase that level at any time of time and at any level that expected. This was the very basic. To move ahead, say for example, you have started developing a test suite, right? So I have one sample project with me. Okay, so this is how my first project is. So what I did, I granularized my code. I created many objects. I created a basic project, and there is a config file associated with it. In that I mention all whatever base URL I need to have. I want how many number of users. If I increase this number to some extent, it will the users. What RAM second, how start date, whatever the data configuration that I need, whatever API key, secret key, whatever things I need, I injected over here. It gives you all the freedom of Scala language. You can have multimap. Using the same key, you can have different values, and you have a config file. Your first simulation is, so you get all, you read data from your config file directly over here. So you can directly create object in Scala actually. So you don't need to get compile. You can create object and directly import it in your simulation. So you get number of users, all these things. And your first scenario was login into your system. And there are so many scenarios we have, and this is how I am setting up my scenario. So I am ramping whatever the config user I have mentioned in configuration file. My HTTP protocol is mentioned over here, and I am doing some assertion. Okay, so I'm doing some assertion that global fail request count should be 0. I don't want that any request should be failed. Or I can increase to let's say we have 10,000 users. It's fine if 10, 100 or 1,000 test case get failed. Your login must be fine. So you can check whatever your scenario name, login authorization scenario, % failure % should be 0. as I mentioned, you get some response time. Preferable means response time, right? So you can specify whatever the maximum response time of your system should be and whatever minimum least performance time should be. And on that basis, it will show how your system, your test suite actually passing or not. I mean, whatever the benchmark, you can set your configuration file that I want this many number of users, this many least to maximum number of users. I want they should ramp on that particular time of second. Successful percentage should be 95%. I want data between this many days, a year, a month, or whatever, everything you can specify, and you do assertion. When your complete test suite will be run, global response time will be calculated as shown on this over here, and it will show your simulation failed or passed based on whatever benchmark set by your market research guys. So this is how your system is behaving. So you are logging into your system. You are logging. You are getting email and password through feeder. You can see I use feeder over here, and I kept login.csv in my folder over here. User files. So I have login.csv. I don't want to reveal the names actually, so I'm keeping this. You have some data with you, and for a search query you can have search. You can write a code and make a JDBC connection to get data from some system, existing system. So let's try with some real example. Here is a very small example I have for Twitter. So let's have 10 users. If I can increase thousands or millions of users over here, and I'm very sure if I made 10,000 or a million users over here, Twitter will not be accessible in India. That's for sure, until and unless they block wide out my IP address. So I don't recommend that you should increase that load on Twitter, but that is how it works. So let's add 100 users on Twitter. I wrote how Twitter login session. So this is how Twitter logged in your system, and your password is. So I'm not using any feeder over here, and let's see how it works. Basically, I haven't given actual username password over here because that will be live. So let's start my simulation. Twitter, and my simulation started. So through non-blocking IO, it's a pure HTTP request I've made through NetIO, and this is how your system is behaving. Yeah. So as I mentioned, I haven't given actual authorization username password. So everything gets failed over here, and it will be shown that these many requests were failed, and this was the past. So this will give me something better result. Results. Okay. What was that? Twitter small. Okay, something like this. So you can see how it works. I mean, the request spread across, and how the user was injected, how the response time, and all these things. Okay, so yeah, I'm stopping over here, and it's for question sessions. Okay, so there is a question from Anand Kulkarni. So it is a comparison between JMeter and Gatling. Okay, so in the very beginning session I mentioned Gatling have a thread-based session management, and it for a Scala or in a Gatling, it uses a mutable session. It's a good question actually. Many times what you need to have if your user authenticated, and you need some data to be traversed through that user next time on your next scenarios. You need some APIs key, secret key for that particular user, and that you get from when your user actually authorized. So sessions are immutable in Gatling, and you can create a new object of session and inject it to back and store all the APIs key. I mean, whatever data you need for that session for that user. So you can keep that session data in that. I haven't much familiar with JMeter, so I can't explain more session related about JMeter, but for Gatling it is how it works. Okay, so there is Manisha. She have a question. What do you mean by a ramp user? Okay, ramp user, just like a fashion show. Okay, so there are somebody who is ramping on that. I mean, coming on that ramp and moving ahead. In the same manner, think like this. So you have 10,000 user ramp on a ramp, means they are the active users and injected in that particular time. And after that number of users get injected, you can hold for some time, or you can just leave it. Means just at once you user that many RAM. Okay, there is Barswaraj who asked a question, because for authentication part, they basically make a request. So if it is getting for third party, right? So purely say your API is designed with some parameter must be passed to get authenticate that particular URL, and even though that URL taking care, if I get this many data, I should authenticate no matter where it is. So something like this. Over here, we are passing form params to the Twitter account, and Twitter authorizing it me too. So same way your HTTP request will be sent. That request has some logic on server side how to get to third party and authenticate it from it. GUI based recording. Good one question. Actually, I missed this. I stopped it actually. It is something like this. Anand, if you are familiar with Selenium ID, right? So Selenium ID is something that a very new user who can record the things script, but who cannot rely on it, right? As a programmer, when you starting very beginning, even when I started, there is a GUI. You set a proxy, a man in middle, and you can start recording the sessions. How your browser, you click on the things on your browser like this, and that ID will keep recording the how you moving ahead, and your system will flow, and you get some script ready in that. But it's not at all recommended, and because ultimately you are requested. I mean, you are interested in how your API is working, but there are hundreds, thousands of requests sent along with a single web page, so that's not actually useful. Okay. Okay, yeah, I think guys, I'm done with all these things. If you still have any questions, feel free to post me. I will be more than happy to, yeah, this is how the UI recorder look like. So you can specify what the URL you are looking for, or what port, username, password, basic authentication parameters are there. Here you can specify your CSV file also. There is a way to get that CSV file. There is a button on left side, HTTP proxy, or you want a CSV, but that's not recommended way to do. Okay. Yeah, I think yeah, let me check if I miss anything. Yeah, there is another question by Jaydatta Yole. Can we test the Ajax apps? Definitely you can test. Definitely, even though it's Ajax, ultimately if some request is sent and you can go to Firefox, or I don't know why Chrome developer tool is reduced, but I mean it's so weird, but you can go check network panel how your APIs is web services are working, and you can write your script in that way. So there is another question by Nagesh, like add file and delete file. So yeah, you can do things. Say for example, if I do some login over here, okay. So basic way to record, enter username, password, and on that basis you have some request is made to your server, and yeah, so this is how your request is made. You will need to analyze it, even though it's Ajax, no matter what it is, and how you get response, or you can directly ask your system manager, who is the developer, how logging, how data is posted to it, and all these things, how headers you need, all these things you can specify. So whatever parameter you have, all these things were specified. So here is Ajax query. It has some headers, post, response. On that basis, you make a queries and define your scenarios. Okay, guys, I'm done with the questions, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Swapnil. We have one more question from Anand Kulkarni. Should I read out the question to you?
Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, does it configurable to have, I think he is asking, is it configurable to have multiple load generator for distributed testing?
Yeah, we do have. You can distribute it with multiple users, multiple ways. It's work with in-house application, cloud application, as well as for your APIs too. And you configure it with the Jenkins or any continuous integration tool too. Yeah, Deepali. Sorry, Deepika.
Thank you, Swapnil. Thanks a lot for this insightful presentation. It was indeed a great one.
Okay.
We are really thankful to you for conducting this webinar with us. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success.
Okay.
And the recording of this webinar will be available on techgeek.com in the past expert speak section. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.